As you can see, there's plenty of dynamic movement that occurs in the manipulation of a can opener. The hand utilizes a lateral pinch grip and gross grasp to manipulate the can opener bilaterally. Additionally, bilateral elbows are flexed, and there is bilateral radiocarpal joint extension throughout the movement. The right and left radiocarpal joints also alternate in ulnar and radial deviation, with left internal rotation present as well. For phase 1 of the movement, both hands close around the handles of the can opener in order to puncture the can and to initiate the task. To complete this movement, the glenohumeral joints of bilateral upper extremities stabilize the arms, and the elbow joints flex to enable the hands to control the handles. Then, the radiocarpal or wrist joints complete extension and ulnar deviation bilaterally in order to clamp the opener onto the can, while the digits and thumbs complete flexion for the grasp.
Here are the muscles that are involved for phase 1. These muscles are used for bilateral grasp, opposition, and flexion of the thumb. All of these movements are concentric contractions when the hand is flexing to grasp the can opener. The prime movers are the muscles that are doing majority of the work. Secondary muscles are muscles that assist the primary muscles to complete the movement. Since the overall movement is flexion, the extensors would be relaxing to let the proper movement be completed.
3 main actions occur during phase 1. The hands open widely, activating the extensor and intrinsic muscles of the hand, then closes into a firm grasp while the extensors and intrinsic muscles of the thumb and fingers are activated. Finally, the grasp tightens with slight wrist extension. The angles of the joint during this phase include bilateral radiocarpal ulnar deviation of 20 degrees, left radiocarpal joint extension 44 degrees. The right radiocarpal joint does not complete flexion or extension in this phase. The right elbow completes flexion of 24 degrees, and the left elbow completes flexion of 84 degrees. In phase 2 of this dynamic movement, the left hand maintains the grasp of the can opener grips, while the right hand alternates its grasp to the can opener handle. During this phase, the glenohumeral joints of bilateral upper extremities stabilize the arms for completion of the movement. Bilateral elbows are flexed, and both the right and left radiocarpal joints complete extension and ulnar deviation, while the digits and thumbs maintain slight flexion.
These are the muscles being used when the left hand is being placed on the grips and the right hand is alternating to the handle. The breakdown of movements is lateral pinch of the right hand around the handle and the left hand opposition to maintain the grasp. Concentric contraction is being completed during the lateral pinch of the right hand, and isometric contraction is occurring during the left hand opposition.
Phase 2 is slightly more complex, with more actions and angles of joints demonstrated. In this phase, the thumb is opposed while the digits are flexed at each joint. The left upper extremity completes ulnar deviation and extension of the radiocarpal joint, while the elbow completes flexion to grasp the handles of the opener. The right upper extremity completes ulnar deviation and extension of the radiocarpal joint, and elbow flexion to change its grasp over to the handle to initiate the twisting motion. The angles of each joint include the left radiocarpal joint in extension of 45 degrees, the left elbow joint is in flexion of 84 degrees, and the left ulnar deviation of the radiocarpal joint is 16 degrees. The right radiocarpal joint completes 48 degrees of extension, the right elbow joint completes flexion of 23 degrees, and the right radiocarpal joint completes ulnar deviation of 29 degrees. Phase 3 continues with the right hand rotating the handle of the can opener to begin the actual opening of the can. In order to do this, bilateral glenohumeral joints stabilize the upper extremities, while the left radiocarpal joint completes ulnar deviation, and the left digits and thumb are in flexion for grasp of the handles, with the left elbow joint also flexed. the right radiocarpal joint moves through radial deviation from ulnar deviation, with the elbow in flexion and the digits and thumb also in flexion.
This slide will discuss muscles used during phase 3, which is the right hand rotating the handle. The movements that are happening are lateral pinch while grasping the handle, supination of the wrist while rotating the handle, radial deviation when initiating grasp, and ulnar deviation when rotating. Concentric contraction is happening during the lateral pinch when initiating the grasp and becomes isometric to maintain the grasp on the handle. Concentric contraction is occurring during supination in order to rotate the wrist. The muscles for radial deviation are completing the concentric contraction while the ulnar deviation complete eccentric contraction. Then, during ulnar deviation, those muscles are concentric contraction, and the radial deviation muscles are completing eccentric contraction.
During this phase, while reaching for the handle and initiating the grasp, the radiocarpal joint goes from ulnar deviation to radial deviation in the right hand, while the radiocarpal joint supinates. During this movement, the left digits are in flexion to maintain grasp on the can opener handles. The angles of the joints during this phase include right radiocarpal joint in radial deviation of 25 degrees, right elbow flexion of 58 degrees, left radiocarpal joint ulnar deviation of 16 degrees, and left elbow joint flexion of 84 degrees. In the fourth and final phase, the right hand releases the handle to complete the rotation of the handle for the full rotation to complete the can opening. To complete this, the bilateral glenohumeral joints stabilize the upper extremities. The right radiocarpal joint moves through radial deviation into ulnar deviation while the elbow is in flexion and the digits and thumb are in slight flexion. The left elbow is in flexion with digits and thumb also in flexion to maintain grasp of the handles.
These are the muscles being used in phase 4, which is the right hand releasing the handle to complete the rotation. The muscles listed complete the concentric contraction for the movements within phase 4, while the flexion muscles of the digits 2 through 5 and flexion muscles of the thumb are working in the eccentric contraction to complete the movement.
During this phase, the actions completed include the right digits and thumb extending to release grasp of the opener, and then reposition while the right radiocarpal joint moves through pronation and radial deviation into supination and ulnar deviation. The joints involved demonstrated the following angles: the right radiocarpal joint from radial deviation of 25 degrees to ulnar deviation of 29 degrees, and the right elbow joint maintains 84 degrees of flexion.
Ideal movement would consist of a single forward-reaching movement with one arm to grasp the can opener. The person should hold on to the can with a non-dominant hand and use the dominant hand to grasp opener with slight ulnar deviation. Once the can is pierced, the non-dominant hand grasps the handle of the opener in a neutral grasp while the dominant hand turns the handle until the can is open and alternating between ulnar and radial deviation. The shoulders should be in neutral throughout the task. When initiating grasp, the wrist should be pronated and then supinate as the handle is turned. The person should be able to maintain grasp throughout the task without needing to switch hands or release grip of non-dominant hand. The patient demonstrated decreased grip strength when initiating grasp and attempting to pierce the can. The patient correctly moved the right wrist between ulnar and radial deviation, but demonstrated decreased range of motion because they required more rotations than a functional person. Also, the patient demonstrated right shoulder height due to compensation of decreased forearm strength. The patient had decreased grip strength because they needed rest breaks, and they also switched between hands. The four main things that could be done in order to address the deviations would be pain management, stretches, modalities, and joint mobilization. The patient could take medication, use splinting, or a warming technique in order to address the pain. Medication would consist of something such as Tylenol over the counter, or they could get a prescription for opioids from their doctor. Splinting can be helpful to have the joint remain in neutral and decrease pressure on the joints. Warming techniques could be used, which would consist of a warm shower or a steam room. By stretching and exercising the hands, the patient can maintain mobility and range of motion during activities. Different stretches consist of making a fist and slowly opening the fingers back up, thumb bends, making a C or an O with their digits, finger and wrist lifts, and easy squeezes with a stress ball. Different modalities that a therapist can administer consist of hot packs, ultrasound, and paraffin. Hot packs that are filled with mud and sit in warm water release a slow, moist heat, allowing the muscles to relax. Ultrasound sends sound waves to the muscles to create a deeper warmth of the muscles and joints. It is important to make sure that the therapist is educated on the correct modalities in order to not harm the patient. Paraffin is a technique where wax is melted to a consistent temperature. The wrist and hand are then dipped into the wax up to 3 times. After removing the hand from the wax, the hand is wrapped to contain the heat. This is another form of moist and slow heat. Joint mobilization help with relieving pain and increasing motion. The therapist partially separates joints by applying pressure and gradually moving the joint. The therapist should closely monitor pain throughout and should not use this technique if there is any swelling or pain